Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Single best idea, 2 tidbits of an eventful Friday here on Bloomberg Surveillance. Inside baseball and some history as well. Most of this process that we do for 3 hours was invented years ago. I'm actually sitting in the room where it was invented here at our world headquarters by Emily. Emily went and said, okay, we got to do this. We have a staff of 20. I have 3 interns, all the rest of it. Great. But the overload, the bearing of getting all these guests in, all these voices, you can imagine trying to do it for one day, for 5 days, or to do it across a 20-day month. This Friday was an example of a spectacular guest list. We could have done 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. I could have done a 3-hour podcast of surveillance single best idea, but instead we have to choose and choose rapidly. And we do that because the staff really controls the show. I can't say enough how I'm not involved in picking the guests. We go over them and all that. This one was good, this one was bad, and that. But what a joy to walk into the world headquarters today of Bloomberg and see the quality of our guests. Dan Ives will join us in a moment, no doubt, on Apple. But Ed Yardeni is here, and he is identified with the bull market not last October, but the 2 Octobers now on, and is beginning to be a great bull market. There's another bull market. It's out there in Bitcoin. I mean, come on. You got to ask Ed Yardeni about BitDog.
Well, this will probably get a lot of people mad at me, but I mean well, and that is I view Bitcoin as digital tulips. In other words, it is kind of like what happened in Holland with the bubble in tulips, but there's a huge difference here, which really presents the possibility of much higher upside, which we've already seen, and that is the notion that it's a global market and it's open 24/7, and we're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people playing in the Bitcoin marketplace. Yeah. So I have no idea how high it could go. I have no idea how low it can go.
Ed Yardeni there, Scarlet Fu, sitting in for Paul Sweeney, fell off her chair when he said digital tulips. I thought that was absolutely perfect. Mr. Yardeni, very importantly, reconfirming his optimism to 5,400 this year. He remodeled out 6,000, and he did not model 6,500 out to 2026. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but Dr. Yardeni made very clear that the trends in place can stay in place, and that's how you begin to imagine 6,500 SPX. I'm going to in my head say that's Dow 48,000, Dow 50,000 out there somewhere. We will see as we go. He is without question the hardest traveling securities analyst on the street. Why? Because people insist on listening to Dan Ives. He's at Wedbush, and if you just follow him on social, the airplane schedule is absolutely brutal. We were talking about the niceties, say, of Singapore Airlines or, the domestic airlines as he does, where he goes 20 days a month, I would say, on a global basis. He thinks nothing of flying to Australia for 72 hours. And, of course, all of that, and, of course, a huge cost in doing that for Wedbush is made up by people that demand to hear from this opinionated technology analyst. Dan Ives is so good that even if you totally disagree with him, you want to hear his thinking. It's not that he's been wrong on Apple's. Apple's been sort of resilient. I'll say he's been off the mark on Tesla, and there's been a couple other doozies. But on Apple, he was brilliant today. Just as one quick tidbit, modeling out late in the conversation that the services segment of Apple, that $2.99 you spend for the Bob Bragg story, the movie that's out on Apple right now, those services fees is a $1.5 trillion business. Just one tidbit from Dan Ives today. But far more importantly, it's about the view forward for Cupertino.
And that's what it's all about right now for Apple. I just keep going back to 2.2 billion iOS devices. That's the install base. You have 275 million iPhones that have been upgraded in 4+ years. Now you have AI coming to what I believe is a new app store and AI coming to iPhone 16 with them owning their own chips. That's why I believe a year from now, this is a company that's going toward $4 trillion, not going lower in terms of the sentiment.
Dan Ives, resilient on Apple and making clear off of, I believe it's a May 2nd earnings report. You know what? It may take a little longer to see the future of the Dan Ives optimism with Apple. We did talk about the A18 chip as well. Look to Mark Gurman and his must-read power on all things Apple, and frankly, Gurman going out to a little bit other technology as well. It's real simple. This is a growing project. As I say, it's a work in progress. Thank you so much for your support, particularly thanking Apple for best practices on podcasts. The show is on Apple CarPlay. It's free. You download the Bloomberg app. Scarlett Fu has it. If Scarlett Fu has Apple CarPlay, you too can have Apple CarPlay. And on Android at Google Play. On YouTube, you go in, you search Bloomberg Podcasts, and it's a growing effort. And yes, we're very aware of some of the things you've requested on YouTube, and we're working on them right now. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.